But there's a lot to get to, so let's get to it. First, Cory Morgan is talking about Pierre Poilievre's convention. He says conventions can be dangerous for parties and disrupt momentum if they go awry. So if things are going well and you have a convention and, maybe Stéphane Dion comes out and nobody understands what he says for 40 minutes and everybody kind of looks worried at each other, and then you lose the next election, you're like, oh man, that didn't work out so well, did it? Right? So conventions can be dangerous, says Cory. And this one was widely reported as the best convention anybody's ever seen anywhere. It's the best one. So be wary when people say that, right? I remember when Justin Trudeau was the best thing since sliced bread, the hair, the socks, right? The everything package, except, he doesn't think about money and the budget balances itself, right? Who wouldn't vote for that? Jeepers creepers. Liberals are starting to panic and it shows. Yeah, I'll show you some liberal panic. We'll get to liberal panic over here. We're going to talk about liberal panic. I'll talk about it right now, just very quickly. Here is one. This Mark Miller is a liberal. No, we'll do this guy first. We'll do this one first. Garnet Genius points out Mark Miller. He says, this tweet is from Justin Trudeau's immigration minister. He's going hard negative because his party has broken the immigration system and has no solutions. A Pierre Poilievre government would fix immigration, get new homes built, and allow newcomers to work in their field. None of that's going to fix housing. None of that's going to getting new homes built isn't going to do anything. Allowing people to work in their field isn't going to do anything. But I digress. The Liberal minister says, oh, for goodness sake, Mr. Poilievre is no more a very well-paid, taxpayer-funded, toxic internet troll. The methane emitted from this man is off the charts. That's a cabinet minister, a Liberal cabinet minister. And Mark Miller, same cabinet minister, says, nobody likes a classless jackass, talking about the leader of the official opposition. Who's classless there, Mr. Miller? Very interesting, right? So the Liberals are losing their mind, and it shows. Here's Pierre Poilievre, and his speaking is very purposeful. He's taking people on a journey. People like this. People are going to vote for this. And it's interesting because yesterday I saw somebody say, hey, did the Conservatives, shut down illegal immigration and do this litany of things that they need to do in order to kind of restore the country? And the answer is no. Right? No. The speech is good. The convention's good. Some of the promises are good at the convention, right? But yesterday we did a kitchen table talks, and yesterday somebody pointed out, I think it was Peter pointing out, there was the milk decided, and the dairy cartel, right? And the CPC promptly ignored that under Scheer. Scheer. and then he went up and drank the milk, right? And so there are a whole bunch of examples of things that happen at conservative conventions that don't get into the broader context of the politics. So, Mr. Poilievre is riding this convention going well right now, and people are going to love it. And they're going to look at him, the two-dimensional character, and they're not going to look at the rest of the policies. They're not going to examine this. They're going to read headlines and snippets and say, this guy's our guy. And I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. Here's Pierre Poilievre's Hope and Home. Remember Hope and Change? Barack Obama, Hope and Change, right? Hopey changey. Here's Pierre Poilievre.
The most important job of any leader is to bring hope. Hope is what Canadians need now more than ever.
It's hokey. It's hokey.
Hope is something that you feel, but it's hard to picture it. So let me paint a picture for you of students laughing and walking down safe streets to class, the distant drumming of hammers driving nails through Canadian lumber into yet another beautiful new Canadian home. Shopkeepers sweeping clean storefronts at the end of another day, waving to seniors heading home with a car full of groceries and change in their pockets. As daylight fades to night, kids are heard pleading for 10 more minutes of street hockey before bed, and then quiet. And a young couple sits on their front porch, soaking in the summer warmth. A Canadian flag hanging gently but proudly from the front of their house, with a cold drink in one hand and a paycheck in the other. They look into each other's eyes in a way that can only say, the hard work paid off. The sacrifices were worth it, because finally, we're home. Ladies and gentlemen,
I mean, it's a better vision than the one Trudeau is offering people, and they will latch on to that because that's a vision and a dream that people have in common, would like to aspire to. If your hard work is rewarded, then you will work hard. But if your hard work is rewarded with, yeah, sorry, the house that you wanted was given to this family that just got here because poor them, right? I mean, you're Canadian, lucky you, but poor these guys. So they got that house. But the house that we were thinking about giving you just got $100,000 more expensive, and you don't have enough for the down payment anymore. Sorry about your luck. See you later. Do you have that apartment, or did you already put your 30 days? You already put your 30 days? Yeah. So your rent's gone up by $1,000 a month too. Good luck saving, right? That's what's happening to people who are working hard. Meanwhile, they're building homes for homeless people. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make any sense. So people are upset, and they're trying to get behind a politician who's saying the words that they think represent them and what they want. And so Pierre Poilievre is doing that in spades, and it's resonating, and people are talking about it. Here he is on a commercial flight, and they've handed over the speaker system to him.
Hello, everyone. This is Pierre Poilievre. Happy to join you for a wonderful WestJet flight back to my hometown of Calgary. Who's ready for a home you can afford? Who's ready for some common sense? Who's ready to give a big thank you to the WestJet pilots and crew?
Okay, it goes on a little long, and it's less wedding singer and more kind of awkward Canadian politics. Like, ooh. But it would have been funny if there are any liberals on that plane. They probably hated every minute of it. So it's pretty funny. Here is so contrast Pierre Poilievre doing his speech and standing ovation and hanging out on the plane, doing his announcement thing, whatever that is, wedding singer announcement thing. Here is somebody liberal, and who is this? He's a liberal minister, Mark Holland, and he is, 10, 12 people there. One person is sleeping behind these two ladies, and he's trying to make the case that the liberals are popular and that Mr. Poilievre is not. And I don't believe him for many reasons, mainly because he's a liberal, but there are a whole bunch of other reasons too. Here is Mark Holland talking about, just addressing his very small group of supporters.
Somebody in Pierre Poilievre, who's right now in Quebec City, who's saying that this country is broken. His objective is to rip apart rather than build up. And it is true right now that in the world we're facing incredibly difficult times. We were just having a conversation about the fact that the pandemic was a trauma for all of us. And we came out of the pandemic and we see a war in Europe.
So the liberals thought we should traumatize them more. I was mistaken as well about who was sleeping. This guy's not sleeping. I saw his eye right at the beginning. I thought, oh man, his eye's right there. I can see it. And this guy's the guy who's sleeping. You can't see what I'm pointing at. Hold on. This guy in the back left corner is the one who's sleeping. So very interesting. If elderly people are asleep while the speech is happening, you might be at a liberal fundraiser. Yowza. And Mark Miller is upset about this whole thing as well. Pierre Poilievre tweets out, putting partisanship aside, no one likes to see a Canadian prime minister repeatedly humiliated and trampled, interesting use of words there, upon by the rest of the world. And so the Sun headline has Justin Trudeau being shown the door by Mr. Modi, right? And so get out, please, right? And do you like Canada being not disrespected, but having a situation where Canada is sidelined in the G20? Is it acceptable that Justin Trudeau just didn't show up for the G20 dinner? Like, that's a strange thing to do. Why would you just not show up at the G20 dinner? I have no idea. Kirk is talking about the body language. Here's Modi and Trudeau sitting side by side. You know how they all have these pictures together, right? So they're sitting side by side and they're taking pictures. And Kirk says the body language here, the facial expressions tells a whole story. Keep in mind, this is the best image Justin Trudeau's handlers could find to post. Trudeau thought he could lecture India and in relations to harboring Khalistini extremism in Canada with how he supports freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, free right to peaceful protest, while doing the opposite when Canadians protest tyrannical discriminatory mandates, frozen bank accounts, people were arrested, etc. India's media said that Justin Trudeau's democratic credentials are under deep questions. Yeah. India media also said if Khalistan was to be created, it would be more likely created within Canadian borders. Let's remember that the Liberal government is propped up by Jagmeet Singh, who himself participates in Sikh separatist rallies and is blocked by India. The world sees Trudeau for who and what he is. So that's interesting, right? Here's Joe Biden, and maybe in a moment of lucidity, realizing who's in front of him, and he started giving him heck. It looks like he's pointing at him with a crooked finger, right? Apparently, I used to do this a lot. Maybe I still do this. I thought it was straight, but Joe Biden is seen very, very aggressively for, his age and frailty. You'll see at the end of the show, addressing Justin Trudeau. Dean says, I haven't seen this Biden-Trudeau G20 photo explained in the Ottawa media yet. Anyone? Why is Joe Biden angrily pointing at Justin Trudeau's face? Mickey says Trudeau's only G20 leader to pull away from longer handhold with Modi at ceremony. He also skipped Modi's leader dinner the night before with the Prime Minister's office refusing to stay. Why? So no, we'll just order in. Are you sure, Prime Minister? Can I go instead? Sit down, Hadrian. The Post-Millennial is reporting, Trudeau, obviously Canada will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. This is the Canadian media. Obviously, Justin Trudeau does not support freedom of peaceful protest. I don't know what freedom of conscience is, but I'm pretty sure if he could stop me thinking things, he would. And Canada, freedom of expression, they don't support freedom of expression. They're actively trying to censor their own citizens by coming up with bullshit laws on the internet to target big tech to pay off their news organizations. It's ridiculous. Here's the reporter asking about what Modi asked them about. I'll show you Trudeau's response. Although I'm going to just play the reporter part because there's two sections. Okay, I'll play this. We have to watch this. Here we go.
Two issues you didn't mention. One that has been reported by the Indian media, quoting Indian government sources who say Prime Minister Modi spoke to you about the presence, in his terms, of Sikh Khalistani militants in Canada. And the second is the question of interference in Canada by India, which has been cited by Canada's own intelligence agencies. Did neither of those topics come up?
No, they both came up over the years with Prime Minister Modi. We've had many conversations on both of those issues. Obviously, Canada will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us. At the same time as we're always there to prevent violence, to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it's important to remember that the actions of the few do not represent the entire community or Canada. The flip side of it, we also highlighted the importance of respecting the rule of law, and we did talk about foreign interference.
Well, if somebody says, did those things come up? And the answer is no, yes, they did. Why say no at first? Why start with no? Here is some India media looking at this, and this is English language. She's interviewing a gentleman who's written a book on the Khalistani violence and Khalistani separatists and that whole movement in Canada. And he's a journalist and a diplomat, maybe. I'm not sure if he's a diplomat, but he wrote this book. And these guys make the point that the last prime minister to turn down India was, I guess, Pierre Trudeau in 1982. Was he prime minister in 1982? I was a baby. And so if Trudeau was the Air India bombing, or a precursor to the Air India bombing, because the Air India bombing was in 1984, wasn't it? Was a request for an extradition of the eventual Air India bomber. And Pierre Elliott Trudeau apparently said no. So that's what these guys are talking about. But I wanted to show you the beginning of this. It's very interesting, but we don't have enough time. It's like an 8-minute video. We don't have enough time to get through all of it, but it's super interesting. Here we go.
In an extraordinarily sharp statement from India after the meeting between Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has accused Canada of basically shielding anti-India extremist elements that, according to a formal release issued by India just moments ago, help promote secessionist anti-India activities and incite violence against Indian diplomats. As communiques and official press releases go, this has to be amongst the sharpest that I've ever seen. There was no attempt to gloss over the problems between both countries. There was no attempt at all to actually even put a vaguely positive spin on the India-Canada equation at this point. Now, remember, you're seeing, of course, that statement on your screen at this point. Remember, Justin Trudeau has been somewhat low-key, if that's the way to put it. The Canadian Prime Minister did manage to meet with the Prime Minister amid reports that the bilateral meeting may not take place at all. That meeting did take place. It was not very long. And now we know what the Prime Minister actually conveyed at that meeting with Mr. Trudeau. Trudeau himself skipped the president's reception for G20 leaders, leading to massive speculation. Where was Trudeau? Is Trudeau sulking? Was he being snubbed? And it now turns out that there is a clear and distinct frost and iciness, as it were, to the India-Canada equation.
It's very interesting. Like, is Trudeau? They're saying, is Canada snubbing Modi? Why aren't they here? What's going on? And now there's a frost to Canada and India's relationship. And they go into exploring the similarities between Pierre Elliott Trudeau and his relationship with India and Justin Trudeau and his relationship with India. It's very interesting. Here's Kat, and it says, using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome. This is a quote from the Rouleau Commission, the Rouleau report, during the POEC, the Emergency Act review, where Justin Trudeau was asked about protesting, and that's what he said in response, right? But he's saying, obviously, we support freedom of peaceful protest, only if you're protesting the right things, the approved things. This is Indian media, more Indian media. So having the Indian media calling your prime minister a sulk is pretty interesting. Saying what these guys say is absolutely just jaw-dropping, because he says, when you hear madness, when you hear absolute insanity, you don't have to be polite, okay? And he's absolutely, the gloves are off. People are sick and tired of Justin Trudeau's nonsense. They're going to play Justin Trudeau's speech again, and he's going to give his opinion about it. Here we go.
The Canadian Prime Minister, he's had, of course, a meeting with Prime Minister Modi, and this is what he's come out and said. Let me quote this. Both the issues came up over the years with PM Modi. We've had many conversations on both those issues. Canada will always defend the freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, and freedom of peaceful protest, and it is extremely important to us. At the same time, we are always there to prevent violence and to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it is important to remember that actions of a few do not represent the entire community or Canada. The flip side of it, we have also highlighted the importance of respecting the rule of law, and we did talk about foreign interference. This is on the issue of Khalistan. So Justin Trudeau, let's listen in, then I want to discuss.
Sorry, I just had to re-cue this up, but here is just, I just didn't want to listen to that whole speech again from Justin Trudeau. So this is the end of that Justin Trudeau speech that we've already watched. Here we go. Okay,
so I'm going to now shed the diplomatics, because when something manifestly insane takes place in your face, there's no reason to be polite about it. Justin Trudeau has just shown you the finger when it comes to Khalistan. This man has just come after imposing an emergency in his country to crack down on the freedom of expression and the right to peaceful protest, and has just talked about the freedom of expression and the rule of law and the right to protest. Okay? Now, the truth is, Mr. Trudeau, like any good Punjabi, I have family in Canada, and I promise you, the nonsense that you're talking is emanating from sheer hubris, a total disconnected view of the world, where you think that we don't see what you're up to, we don't understand what you're up to, and you can continue behaving in a totally nonsensical fashion, talking nonsense. You imposed an emergency in your country, your father imposed an emergency in your country, your democratic credentials are under deep question, and if Khalistan is a problem, and if a Khalistan is to be created, it is more likely it is going to be created within the territorial boundaries of Canada. And let me add to that, we should become or at least I will, become the biggest proponent of the independence of Quebec, which has been trying to secede from Canada for the longest period of time. And I have a big question on why the map of Canada should not be described as Canadian Occupied Quebec, COQ. Perhaps we should issue a map of the world as well. Complete nonsense. You come out and spoken once again. You could have taken it seriously. You should have taken it seriously, but you didn't. Patikrit, this man, last time he came for a bilateral to India, showed up with a Khalistani in his entourage. What is going on? I mean, it's after a point, it's totally insane. You can't say it's domestic politics. You can't say he doesn't get it. You can't say that the emergency in Canada didn't happen. You were beating up truckers in Canada. You were freezing their bank accounts. I mean, what is this guy talking? Which world is he living in?
Rishabh, he's a perfect...
Yes. Yeah, yes. The reason I showed you this is because these people are looking at this and saying, what reality are you watching? Do you remember when your deputy prime minister froze people's bank accounts? Do you remember beating up truckers with your bust-in cops? Like, we see it. In India, we see it. He's saying, we see it. In Guelph, we see it, right? And so it's insane. And so India, as a country, is saying, holy smoke, dude, what are you on? Ryan says a second video from the G20 and not one piece of footage showing Trudeau was even there. This is definitely on purpose. Not 1 second of video footage of that man, not one, period. And so Trudeau went to skulk off and his plane didn't work. CP24 is reporting Trudeau's plane grounded in India by technical issues after G20 summit conclusion. Yay. And he's there until at least Tuesday. Backup plane on its way to pick up Prime Minister Trudeau as Canadian delegation stranded. The federal government did sign a $3.6 billion contract to buy new planes. In fact, before we left, we were told one of the new planes was on the tarmac. Ah, shucks. Darn, right? I'm sure he'll be home at any moment, right? And the Liberals are losing their mind, but we already talked about that. So it's quite interesting how much the Liberals are upset about Pierre Poilievre in the context of this disastrous India trip. They're trying to turn the page. They don't want to talk about India. They want to talk about how crazy Pierre Poilievre is because, reasons, right? Let's not talk about any of the foreign missteps that our leader just made. Here's CTV News, and they're talking about, I thought this was funny, strategists discuss what Trudeau needs to do to regain voters' confidence. And I was just here for the ratio, and there's a whole bunch of, he needs to resign. Really, there's nothing Justin Trudeau can repair any kind of his brand or anything like that. He just needs to go, and he needs to go now. People are not happy with Justin Trudeau. I'm not surprised, but it's one of those things where it's nice to see. Again, Twitter's not real life in the sense that the responses on Twitter, you can't always be sure that that's how the general public feels, right? Look at the Greenbelt scandal. The general public, I don't know that that's a big scandal outside of some Twitter hashtags, really, right? So, but the real world is in Twitter in that people make announcements and break news on Twitter. That kind of news is real, but the responses, you can't always gauge. But it seems like pretty universal response on a lot of these things that are being put out. But a universal response on Justin Trudeau right now is that he's people aren't liking him. That brand is not what it once was anyway. Holly Doan is reporting minister claims he protested human rights atrocities while attending climate conference in China. Department of Environment Canada issued no such statement, and Stephen Guilbeault, his office would not release a text or recordings in which he mentioned human rights. So, hey, do you have any proof of that statement or no? Here is Canada Buster, and this is Karina Gould. She's being interviewed by Vasi Kapolis, and Canada Buster says Liberal Cabinet Minister Karina Gould refuses to acknowledge Canadians are suffering because of the carbon tax, says carbon tax will not be paused. She's not a cabinet minister anymore. She's the government leader in the House. But she was a cabinet minister 3 times, and then she got shuffled out of cabinet. So, yikes, right? Not doing a great job there, Karina Gould. Here's that interview. She doesn't answer the question.
Is about the part of what you described as driving up costs that is in your control, right? That's the carbon tax. The stuff from Ukraine, the recovery from the pandemic, I understand those are exogenous factors. The carbon tax is in your control, and there are climate plans that exist in other jurisdictions, for example, just south of the border, that do not include any kind of punitive measures for consumers. Again, why would your government not give some consideration at least to pausing, not eliminating, but even just pausing things specifically for provinces and people who are dealing with already a lot of costs? And I know you say that the costs aren't much when it comes to the carbon tax,
remember
but all that's being analyzed are the direct costs,
actually
not the indirect costs.
Pan-Canadian climate strategy that was agreed to by all provinces and territories, except for, and we only applied the federal backstop in provinces or territories where they didn't meet the federal objectives. So BC, Quebec, Ontario until Doug Ford was elected. If you talk to someone who lost their house in a wildfire or who lost their house in a hurricane, like that's the issue. That's what we're trying to protect against, right? And we know that when we had extreme heat,
those concerns,
vulnerable
and
people.
I am
no, but Vashi, it's really important because these are real things that are impacting real people. And it's way more expensive to lose your house in a flood, a wildfire, or in a hurricane than what we're talking about with the price on pollution.
The Liberals go for an emotional argument where they can't win in a factual argument. So she's saying you would understand climate change if you lost your house in a wildfire, or if you lost your house in a hurricane, you'd get it. But that's not climate change. Life happens. Fires happen before climate change. Climate change isn't causing fires anyway, right? So it's quite interesting that instead of listening to the question being posed and listening that people are done paying for this this real tax that does absolutely nothing for the environment, they're doubling down on their rhetoric that talks about how, without this tax, there'll be more wildfires, there'll be more hurricanes. No, none of 2008 was the beginning of the carbon tax in British Columbia. Has any of that helped now? Has it mitigated any of the damage supposedly being done by climate change now? Is BC being spared because of their climate tax? Nope. So it's dumb. It's an argument that the only way they could possibly win is if they got you off facts and moved you into an emotional argument, which is exactly the only thing that the Liberals. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful